What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today I'm giving you my Week 6 NFL Power Rankings after a really interesting weekend of football. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, hit that like button, it would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, want more sports content like this in your life, hit that big red subscribe button. And let me hear your thoughts down in the comment section. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Who do you think I moved up too much? Who did I move down not enough? Love to have all those sorts of thoughts on these power rankings. Also, love to have any video ideas, some things you want to see me cover. Let me know down in the comment section. If you want to see it, I'll make it happen. Last order of housekeeping before we get into this. These power rankings are not just a reassortment of the standings, and they're not based off head-to-head record. I mean, you could make an argument off of that logic that because the Bears beat the Raiders beat the Steelers beat the Bills, that the Bears, therefore, are better than the Bills. And that's just not the world we live in right now. So, I know head-to-head is important, and I'm taking that into account. It's a part of the equation, but it is not the sum of all parts. So just wanted to get that clear before we get into it. But let's start. We'll kind of go through pretty quickly here with the bottom teams. Not a whole lot has changed. The Jags and the Texans trade spots. David Culley, give him credit, man. He's got this team fighting hard. In a lot of ways, what I thought Urban Meyer was going to be for Jacksonville with a true culture change, really it's happened more in Houston than it is in Jacksonville. And, it helps not having any of the off-the-field issues that Urban Meyer has walked into. Lions stay at 31, man. A lot of emotion from Dan Campbell and that team overall. They are fighting. But this is kind of like a best-case scenario if you're a Lions fan in my eyes. Like, you're seeing this team fight and stay competitive and not be far from winning these close games, but you're still losing, and you're going to get someone like a Kayvon Thibodeau, a Derek Stingley Jr., or Kyle Hamilton, or DeMarvin Leal, someone like that in next year's draft, because they still need some more superstar potential type of players, but they're staying competitive right now, and that's a good sign for Detroit. Jets, they hold pat at 29. They lost. It was kind of a weird game with Atlanta, but I still feel part of it's because they have a win, that they should stay over the Texans, Lions, and Jags. But, this Jets team, it's still a little rough, especially on the offensive side. At number 28, the other New York football team, the Giants, down 4 spots. Look, they got doubled up by the Cowboys. Plus, these injuries are just really concerning. They can't go much lower in these power rankings, but we'll see what this Mike Glennon tenure looks like. Hopefully Saquon's able to get back pretty soon. Kenny Golladay can recover from the hyperextended knee. Kadarius Toney is proven to be worth being a first-round wide receiver. This wide receiver class is just insane for this rookie group. But that said, Kadarius Toney, big game. You'd like to see the punching not come a rise, but nonetheless, you have something with Kadarius Toney, and it's clear. So pressure's now on for Jason Garrett. It's a little easier when you have, no Sterling Shepard, no Darius Slayton, and Kenny Golladay potentially out for a longer period of time. But once all those guys are back, I still want to see Kadarius Toney be a featured part of that offense. Giants coming off the loss from down 4 spots. So are the Miami Dolphins. Man, it could not be any better time for Tua to be coming back. And, a couple weeks ago I said, wow, it's kind of concerning. Jacoby Brissett doesn't look all that different from Tua. That was definitely in that first week against the Raiders where they hung close. But since then, I think it's become more and more clear that Tua is an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett. So, it looks like Jacoby's a pretty okay Band-Aid for a week, maybe 2 at a time. Also, the Raiders look like they're on the downswing, but we'll also talk about that in a little bit. But Tua is definitely an upgrade. This team needs to figure it out on the offensive end. Even the defense got picked apart against Tampa. I mean, at one point that game was 10-10, and I was kind of interested, thinking it was going to be close, and then Tampa Bay just opened the floodgates and threw Miami out the back window. And I mean, wow, what a game for Tampa Bay. We'll talk about that later. Falcons, they beat the Jets, so they are moving up 2 spots. It was a pretty solid offensive day. Defense did just enough. They, despite wanting to choke it at the end, pull on Atlanta. Kyle Pitts finally has the big day that we've been waiting for, fantasy owners and football fans alike. He got the targets, he got the production, everything. He was used all over the field. Welcome sign. Now I want to see that trend continue once Calvin Ridley's back, once Russell Gage is healthy, all those sorts of things. Also, you just have a true playmaker, Cordero Patterson. I've been saying for a while he should be a running back just because he gives you better mismatches there. And I kind of hope that Atlanta moves in this positionless football direction, right? Like talk about basketball, you don't need guards, forward, centers. You just need 5 ballers, 5 hoopers. Atlanta, man, you could have like this wide receiver turned running back, Cordero Patterson, this tight end / wide receiver / do-it-all guy, and Kyle Pitts. I think that's the direction that football, especially on the offensive side, should move towards. That point aside, we're on to the Eagles at number 25. A lot of fight in this win. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're going to be a team that's better than Carolina. If they played 10 times, I'd probably take Carolina at 7 of those 10 occasions. It's relatively close. But that said, the Eagles hung with them. And you kind of saw what happens when you have a mobile quarterback. This was a high floor game to me, where Jalen Hurts gets 2 rushing scampers, and he's not throwing the ball great. He has a couple of good passes, right? He always has these couple of moments, kind of like me golfing, right? You have a couple swings where it's like, okay, I can come back to this. Let me stick with it, just because he shows you a little something. But for the most part, it's not necessarily anything special. But the defense just had one of those weeks where the pass rush will take over. That on top of eventually Hurts breaking through and came in clutch towards the end of the game. That's a big road win there for Philadelphia. Washington football team down 4 spots at 24. Honestly, thought about having the Eagles leapfrog Washington, but I'm waiting to see these 2 teams line up, because in a lot of ways, what we saw this past week could be equivalent to what we see with Washington on a good day, right? Where that pass rush can take over. You have a quarterback who can do a lot with their legs and extend plays and be kind of wonky there. I think there's a little bit more talent in the wide receiver room for Washington, but that's because, Terry McLaurin's a proven number 1. Devonta Smith is probably on his way there anyway. So a lot of ways, these 2 teams are so similar that I'm just kind of waiting to see them go head to head before I put any distance between the 2. Chicago is moving up 3 spots, and now they're 2-3, right? Like, they didn't have to use Justin Fields a lot. They ran the ball pretty efficiently despite David Montgomery. The defense, Khalil Mack, in a revenge game against his former team, went off. Fantastic stuff there if you're a Bears fan. And Fields, like I said, did just enough. They didn't give him the whole plate of a workload, if that makes sense. Instead, they just said, hey, Justin, use your legs, make these certain throws, and he executed, right? So things are starting to build in the right direction, I think, for a young quarterback with Chicago. But yeah, now they're a game under 500, tied for second in that division. I don't think they compete with Green Bay, but in and around the wild card hunt for sure. So the Chicago team, don't count them out. Things are starting to get interesting there. Pittsburgh Steelers also moving up 3 spots. Not a win I thought they were going to come away with. If you saw my Week 5 picks last week, I took Denver despite them being on the road, but Pittsburgh's defense was suffocating. Other than, James Pierre got picked on a little bit when he was in one-on-one coverage against someone like Courtland Sutton, which is just a mistake. And I don't know how that happens, but it did, and Courtland Sutton gets a big touchdown. But then we also saw Big Ben play the best game of the season. He wasn't afraid to air it out in a few points, and he was actually hitting on some of those throws. I like to see it more frequently, right? Like we had the 50-yard dot to Deontay Johnson, and then we just didn't throw the ball deep for the rest of the first half. Still want to see more there. Chase Claypool's a dynamic athlete. He's more than just a 50-50 guy. You can do a lot with him. And he had a big week as well, and they finally ran the ball. This is what Pittsburgh, I think, wants to be, is this team that can just count on Najee Harris for 100 yards every week, probably a touchdown to go with it, and then from there try to build the offense. So I still think they're working a little backwards on the offensive side, but when you have a great defense, you can kind of make those mistakes and get away with it, and I think this is one of those weeks where they could. So they are up to number 22. Colts down a couple spots. Man, it really hurts giving up 16 unanswered in that fourth quarter to Baltimore. You have a couple of the missed field goal at the end of the fourth quarter is a big point that sticks out. That said, the Colts were in a position to win that game when I didn't think they had any business being it, right? Like beforehand, I was preparing for a blowout. I thought Baltimore was just going to run away with it. But the Colts showed a lot of fight, right? And they helped. Lamar Jackson fumbles inside the 5. It's a scoop and score for 6 the other way. That's one of those, fluky plays. Not fluky in a necessarily terrible way, but it's just, that's not going to happen every game. And it went the way of the Colts this time. So they kept it close. They did what they had to do. And Carson Wentz was throwing some dots, 300-plus passing yards. I mean, Wentz looked pretty good. And, if not for some big plays from Odafe Oweh, Lamar Jackson going crazy, Hollywood Brown holding on to those passes. Mark Andrews made a couple of nice grabs as well. I mean, it took a total effort from Baltimore to, stave off the Colts. So they're down a couple spots, but they showed me a lot of fight. And, it's hard to overcome 1-4, but if there's a 1-4 team to do it, it's 100% Indy. Patriots move up 1 spot. Honestly, you could probably compel me to move the Colts ahead of the Patriots just because the Colts looked really good in the loss, while the Patriots felt fortunate to come away with a win against Houston. Like, Texans just caught New England sleeping, it felt like. And Davis Mills tore up Bill Belichick. Not the rookie I would have picked to have a big game against Billy B. But hey, they executed. And again, David Culley's got this team playing really, really hard. New England was able to make those proper adjustments. Doesn't help being down 4 stars on the offensive line. That's just really tough to try to overcome. But I thought this was going to be a week where they could unleash Mac Jones. But I guess because of the offensive line, they chose not to. late fumble from Damian Harris. He could have had a 2-touchdown week. I'm kind of waiting for him to pick it up. I was kind of expecting big things coming into this season for him. And then the Patriots defense does just enough. Also, they get aided by that punt thing, whatever you want to call that, from Houston. A little unorthodox, and it definitely helps New England. Minnesota, you got to put Greg Joseph on the screen here. Moving up 3 spots. For any Vikings fans watching, man, when was the last time you saw a game-winning field goal and it was from 50+? The former Brown, Greg Joseph, your guy, a true Minnesota hero from here on out, just because he made a field goal to win a game. That's just such a rare sight for Vikings fans. But they wanted to choke that game away. And Mike Zimmer's pretty fortunate Greg Joseph nailed that kick, because otherwise I think you're hearing a lot of rumblings about Mike Zimmer also being on the way out. Not for the same reasons as John Gruden or anything like that, but things would start to look pretty murky there at 1-4 in Minnesota, a team that we thought was going to make the playoffs or be around that hunt. But they get bailed out, and they just edged past the number 31 team in these power rankings, but a win is a win nonetheless, and hopefully it can start to move things forward. Vikings are one of those teams where, and this is part of why I think they will ultimately end up parting ways with Mike Zimmer at the end of the year, but they have a lot of talent in a lot of different places. Sure, there's holes as well, but I'm not entirely sure why this team isn't as good as they are, but they just don't seem to put up results despite a good passing attack, an electric running back when he's out there. I know he was out, but still, Alexander Madison's really good. They're getting better play at the offensive line than we had anticipated. Danielle Hunter's back to being a legit Pro Bowl level edge rusher. Michael Pierce is giving you good play. I know the secondary has been really, really bad, so that is definitely a reason that's holding them back. Brashard Breeland has not been solid. Don't know what they're going to do with Cam Dantzler long term. But that said, this team doesn't feel as bad as some of their performances, right? And I think that's just kind of coaching message maybe getting stale, or just a refresh on what you want to do schematically, right? So again, I think they ultimately feels like they're going to end up parting ways with Mike Zimmer at the end of the year. But yes, Minnesota team is definitely a weird one. Bengals and Carolina both stand pat despite losses. Carolina should have won that game, and I would move them down, but since he didn't win, so how much can I do there? And Minnesota's not better than Carolina or Cincinnati at this point, so I can't put the Vikings ahead of the Panthers nor the Bengals. But the Bengals gave Green Bay a run for their money in the game. Again, I just did not think they were going to be able to stay close. And I know Jair Alexander was hurt, and that was a big injury. And if Jair's out there, you see a whole lot less production from Ja'Marr Chase, no doubt about it. But since he's still hung tough with a team that is way further along in the process, it helps that since he was at home for sure. But there was enough to take away here where, despite the loss, I felt comfortable keeping where they were. In Carolina, maybe I was underrating them towards the end of the year. I still think the defense is really solid. Helps, playing Jalen Hurts, not necessarily the greatest of passing attacks, but I think there's still some pieces to like with Carolina, and they're a middle-of-the-pack group, so 17 makes a lot of sense there for me. Sam Darnold's going to give you weeks where he looks really good because the arm talent is solid, but he's also going to give you weeks where decision-making isn't that good. I mean, that's just kind of where I think football's moving towards. You've heard me say it 1,000 times, where the NFL is as deep as it has ever been with one, team competitiveness, but also QB talent, and that's a large part because kids are just throwing the ball younger. They're getting into more competitive leagues in middle and high school. So QB talent and production and qualities are just more advanced now than they were in the 70s, 80s, 90s, yada, yada, yada. But that said, I think you'll see the differential is you'll see a lot of guys who can give you spark moments in these big plays, but the decision-making won't always be as refined as someone like a Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, all the usual names we rattle off as really, really good quarterbacks. So I think that's ultimately where the QB position is moving anyways. But Darnold definitely gives you the guy who can make some wow throws. He can do a lot with his legs. This just wasn't the week where he got it done. Broncos also got him holding pat. They almost made the comeback, right? Like Pittsburgh tried to blow that game late. If not for, James Pierre getting back on the right side of a play and making a pick in the end zone, we're looking at Denver potentially sending that game to OT and pulling a Baltimore. But in that situation, Pittsburgh would be Indy. But the Broncos still showed some fight. Teddy Bridgewater, not his best game of the year, but he's still doing enough to where I think he's better than I anticipated him being coming into the season. Javonte Williams looked pretty good. He had one big run, really. Everything else after that was swallowed up by a good Pittsburgh run defense, but I'm still really loving watching Javonte Williams run, so maybe a little bit of bias there holds on the Broncos up here at 16. But them and Carolina feel really connected. One, because they both started 3-0, and they both have really good defenses. The quarterback was the question mark. A lot of their narratives are similar, and week by week they've had the same result: win, loss. And so because of that, I'm kind of keeping them close together. Seahawks are down 3 spots now. I have to put this out. I know Russell Wilson is out at least 4 weeks. Sounds like I've heard the timetable shift to 6 to 8. Geno Smith did look okay when he came on in relief for Thursday night, but that can happen when you're seeing a guy and you don't have film, you didn't prep for this moment happening. We're going to see what Geno Smith is all about against that Pittsburgh defense next week, and that's Sunday Night Football, which really unfortunate time for a Russell Wilson injury to come about because he's awesome in prime time, would have been great for ratings, but that's NBC's problem, not ours. Seattle will definitely fall down these rankings, but I just didn't want to assume, okay, well, they're going to be worse than Carolina, Cincinnati. They're going to be, worse than Minnesota until I see it. I just want to see what Geno Smith looks like and what Shane Waldron and how he makes that offense around Geno Smith before I start making assumptions about how far they will fall. They're probably coming down. They're almost surely coming down because this is a top-heavy team, and minus Russell Wilson, they're just not the same. But they're already down 3 spots considering they lost. They're going to come down more in the rankings, so don't get too mad at me because I have Seattle still at 15. Raiders are at 14. Man, it's a mess. Seattle and Vegas are kind of in really tricky spots. Seattle, at least you can say, hey, it's just their quarterback got injured. That's kind of unlucky. Turns out John Gruden has, been emailing a lot of questionable things, treating it more like Xbox Live chat, and just, not treating it like a professional workspace. And because that he's out as the head coach of the Raiders. I mean, it's Chucky. That is the brand, right? I mean, that's a huge blow to the image. And I think that whole situation led to them coming out flat and stale against the Bears, a game that I picked Las Vegas to win. Don't know that for sure. I'm just basing it off of what I saw. But Raiders down a spot because they lost, but also down a coach. They're probably a team that's coming down the rankings. And also, Derek Carr just solidified the narrative. One that Joey Bosa said, but you can go back to my QB power ranks before the year. I said Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield are right there with Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins. Baker Mayfield a little less for this point, but for Derek Carr in specific, if you give them a just 7-on-7 setting and you just draw up plays and ask them to make throws, they're great. But the second they face any sort of pressure, they crumble. Kirk Cousins doesn't handle pressure well. Never has Matt Ryan. And Derek Carr is proven to be exactly the same. So it's just another one of those in a long line of he's really good. And if you can keep him upright, draw some open schemes, he will make the throw, no doubt, because he's got a good arm. But the second he starts seeing pressure in his face, things get a little questionable there for Carr. Baker's a little different, but that's a different topic for a different day. San Francisco, I have them moving up a spot, but this is more so because we had that cluster of okay teams that are better than I expected. Denver, Carolina, Cincy, they all lost. And then Seattle, Vegas did as well. So because of that numbers, and ultimately, I think Trey Lance did enough to keep me optimistic about his future. Like some of his misses are just because he is radically really talented. And like when he BB's one into Budda Baker's chest, which by the way, if that was me, dude, chest contusion. That man threw a missile in that play and it went right to the sternum of Budda Baker and he just ate it. Pretty impressive. But a pick there for the Cardinals safety. But Lance did these things and you see these flashes, right? And another example is this 3rd and 5 in the first quarter, maybe it was the second, and he just throws this perfect little 5-yard hitch to Brandon Ayuk, where only Ayuk could get to it, and it was a great catch by Ayuk as well, and it just moves the chains. And it's like, that's what you can do with that arm talent. And then you have some of those crazy overthrows, and where he misses, it's dangerous. Could lead to a lot of turnovers. Plus, I don't know how Isaiah Simmons made that goal line stop against Lance, but 99 times out of 100, that's a touchdown given his rushing ability and the power he runs with. So I think Lance is still the option long term. And the way I think about it is, they lost 17-10 against Arizona, and Arizona didn't necessarily play their cleanest of games. But where would that game have been with Jimmy Garoppolo? I don't know if it's a whole lot better, because a lot of the success for San Francisco was running the football. I think they need to get more with Elijah Mitchell. Maybe that's where you could say if Jimmy G's under center, they're using Mitchell, they're using Sermon more. Maybe that's your argument then. But I think Lance still gives you a higher upside. I think that's what San Francisco needs to chase, given this defense. It is good, but it's not 2019 good. Tennessee Titans moving up 3 spots. They beat up on the Jags. I know there were a couple plays that were, definitely big momentum swingers, right? You have the Dan Arnold fumble. That was a scoop and score early on. That kind of just sets the tone. Additionally, they beat up on the Jags. They're last in my power rankings. I know they're not a good team, and Urban Meyer's situation going around. But they finally look like a team that played out a game that we had anticipated, right? Like, we wanted to see the Titans beat up on the Jags because they're a significantly better team, and they did that. See, they lost to the Jets, and they've had games be closer than they should be. It helps having A.J. Brown back, even though he didn't have a crazy big game. fact of him being out there certainly played a factor. So it was good to see Tennessee just get back to being what we anticipated them being. So because of that, they're up 3 spots. Cleveland is down 3 spots at number 11. Look, tough loss, and I mean, back and forth. You couldn't catch your breath in that game with the Chargers. I mean, unbelievable. My big issue was, I don't know if it necessarily plays out any differently. If anything, it might just aid the Chargers come back a little bit more. But that 3rd and 10, man, like, especially if you're considering paying Baker Mayfield, you got to give him a chance to move the chains and really ice this game down, as opposed to just handing it off and, you know, forcing some time off the clock, or the Chargers use a timeout, whichever one happened, and then giving the ball back to red hot Justin Herbert, right? This is reminiscent to the 4th and 2 Bill Belichick goes for, because he knows Peyton Manning's a buzzsaw, and it was on Sunday Night Football, and it was a huge decision. The Pats don't get it, and it was the talking point for the next week, but he was coaching to win, not coaching to avoid a loss. In this situation, Stefanski was coaching not to lose, right? He was like, okay, what's the safest play? We'll choose some clock. We'll force him to use a timeout. Let's just run it here. As opposed to saying, hey, if we get a first down, this game's over. That's a dub. They missed the PAT. This is our chance to solidify a win. And they didn't do that. The defense also got exposed a little bit, but they're also had a lot of cornerback injuries in this one. So you have 3rd and 4th string options guarding Mike Williams. Not going to end well. So not too worried about the Browns defense in this one. It was more so that decision-making process towards the end of the game, where coaching to win, not coaching not to lose, and the Browns instead did the opposite. Saints are up a spot. Kind of an ugly game against Washington. It was definitely the ugliest 4-touchdown performance I've ever seen from any quarterback. Like, I don't think Winston played all that well, but the stats would rack up and suggest they had a really good day. The Saints are just a better football team. They handled business against Washington, and they made Taylor Heineke really uncomfortable. And also, hey, huge shout out. Marshawn Lattimore showed you what the potential is with a guy that talented can be, right? Like, he was a top 5 pick for a reason. And, he's had moments where he's looked like a CB1, and he's also had moments where he gets cooked. He's had some bad games against Mike Evans in specific. But, man, he really turned it up. 7 pass breakups or something like that against Terry McLaurin. This is no slouch of a wide receiver to go against. So Lattimore balled out, and he showed you the upside that he has. So definitely a good sign moving forward for the Saints. Chiefs are down 5 spots at number 9, on the verge of falling out of the top 10. I'm not quite ready to do that, but they are down a significant portion. 5 spots. I think they might be the biggest mover of the week in my power rankings. That defense is, I was talking to a buddy of mine, it's FCS-like, and that's no disrespect to anybody who's played FCS football. You played college football, I didn't. Congratulations. But that defense against an NFL offense, just DBs looking around, just trying to find the ball in the air. It's just really rough. They can't generate any sort of pressure. They're not good stopping the run. I think Willie Gay Jr. looked okay next to Nick Bolton, so they're getting a little better in the linebacking core, but just about everywhere else, it is an absolute struggle. Daniel Sorensen might be the most hated guy in football right now. So I don't know if Kansas City can reach out to Eric Berry or Earl Thomas. It's been a long time since those guys have played, but hey, if they're in any sort of football shape, it might be worth considering. But that's about the only options really available to replace a Daniel Sorensen, and that's, again, relying on Eric Berry, hasn't played in 3 or 4 years, and Earl Thomas, who's been out of the league basically, 2 years. So it's not likely, but there's just not a whole lot of better players out there than Daniel Sorensen right now. So, tough spot for Kansas City. They also need edge help because Chris Jones is way better on the inside. He's okay on the outside, but he's way better on the inside. So this defense has a lot of work to try to keep up with what that offense can be and what this team's aspirations should be. Ravens moving up to number 8. The Ravens leapfrogging Kansas City at long last. And what a comeback engineered by Lamar Jackson, that defense. I actually live bet that game when the Ravens were plus 475. So thank you, Baltimore. I don't like betting on division rivals, but this one paid dividends. And they just showed a ton of fight. I know there were some plays that went Indy's way that otherwise you would say, okay, well, if that didn't happen, then Baltimore's, winning this game comfortably in regulation. But, that's football. Weird, wonky things happen week in and week out. And Baltimore showed a lot of grit, showed a lot of toughness, and they aired it out. Great passing game from Lamar Jackson. Still had some missed throws for sure, but big plays everywhere, and he used his legs. This was an all-around really great team win for Baltimore. Also, Odafe Oweh, man, doing a quarter season awards video, and Odafe Oweh making a strong case to be Defensive Rookie of the Year in that video. Cowboys are up 3 spots at number 7. And with Dallas, it just feels like that offense is inevitable. Like, cue your Thanos meme. This offense eventually is just going to dump a bucket on your head, and they're just going to pour points on you. And it's just a matter of time. It happened against Carolina. It happened again this week against the Giants. I think both those teams have talent on that side of the ball. I think the Panthers are slightly overperforming compared to prior expectations, and the Giants are underperforming coming into the season where I thought their defense could be at. But hey, Dallas is just a team they're just pouring it all on the board, man. Like, Dak Prescott's playing great. The wide receivers are super talented. Dalton Schultz, Blake Jarwin giving you good play there. Zeke, Pollard, they've been fantastic. Kellen Moore's calling a great game. Then the defense is giving you enough, right? Like, Trevon Diggs may give up some big plays, fourth most yards allowed or somewhere thereabout. But hey, 6 picks in 5 games, you'll take that if you're a Cowboys fan. This team's all about the big plays and playmakers, and right now, those big names, those stars, those playmakers are making big plays. So that's why they come in at number 7. They're a serious contender in the NFC, which is really good for football. It's actually good to see the Cowboys, as much as they get talked about, actually see them be pretty good this year. Rams at number 6, Packers at 5. Both come away with wins and both stay pat. For LA, it's a Thursday night win against Seattle, definitely aided by the fact Russell Wilson goes down. But if you watch my predictions video, I said, this is going to be an Aaron Donald takeover game, which is not, I'm not patting my back. It's nothing that bold. It's not like saying Davis Mills is going to throw 3 touchdowns, no picks. That is a flaming hot take that actually came to fruition. But Aaron Donald took over, and the passing attack was too much for Seattle to keep up with, especially once you lose Russell Wilson. So LA played a game plan, played a game that we kind of anticipated, and they get to win against a division rival. Definitely a big one there. And the Packers at 5. Things got interesting. Maybe you could flip these two teams, but I feel comfortable with them basically being, tied for 5th or, shoulder to shoulder here. And despite, a weird game and Mason Crosby trying to lose it multiple times, not literally, it's just a joke, but they found a way to win a game on the road that felt destined to go the way of the Bengals, right? So there's a lot of resiliency there. Mike LaFleur deserves some credit, and they did a good job coming away with a road dub. And Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, just the definition of a buzzsaw. You can't do anything to stop those two. It doesn't matter. Devontae Adams is going to go for 200-plus yards, and he's going to account for 60% of the passing yards in the game. And for whatever reason, there's just nothing anybody can do about it. It's bewildering, but that's how the NFL has played out. Chargers, they're up to number 4, moving up 3 spots, and man, this team continues to impress. They've won games in different ways, right? They played a lot more low-scoring, I don't want to call them defensive battles, but the offense doesn't take the center stage like it did this week. But then this week, it's the complete opposite, where the defense doesn't do anything that really creates a whole lot of confidence, and they pick on Cleveland's battered secondary, and it results in a 47-42 awesome game to watch. So give credit to LA winning games in different ways. That's the true mark of a really good team. And Brandon Staley's saying all the right things, right? He's making the analytics community happy. He's making the football crowd happy who don't like the nerds and the numbers. But they're just doing all the right things right now. Like, everything is lining up in a positive way. Justin Herbert has taken an even further step forward despite a great rookie year. I didn't really think he was going to get that much better in year 2. Then we would see him become an MVP type of guy in year 3. But hey, he's made that leap, and he might be the MVP frontrunner right now with Kyler Murray and Tom Brady right now. I mean, those are the top 3 in my eyes. And again, check out that awards video coming out later this week. I'm going to be talking about it more then. But the defense wasn't great this week, but overall in the season, it's gelled a lot quicker than I thought it would have under Brandon Staley, so a ton of credit there. Also want to give a quick shout out to Joe Lombardi, right? He's the OC, he's the guy calling the plays, and he's helped enable Justin Herbert turn it on and be an MVP candidate. So don't hear him get mentioned a whole lot, but yeah, the OC, Joe Lombardi, he's done a really good job as well. And because of that, it's a total team effort, and the Chargers are up to number 4. Bucks and Cardinals both down a spot despite wins. Cardinals beat a division rival, not necessarily the prettiest game, and then the Bucks blow out Miami. But Miami doesn't look as good, especially with Jacoby Brissett. So there's nothing that they did any wrong, but I got to give credit to the Bills, right? The Bills went into Arrowhead, and I know Kansas City's 2-3. They're not as good as we thought, but they're still the Kansas City Chiefs, right? They were in the Super Bowl last year, and I know the defense isn't good, but Buffalo's defense stood out, and they made it tough for Kansas City, right? Like, think of that first touchdown to Byron Pringle, like 10-play plus drive. And I mean, there was one big play, maybe like one chunk a play on that initial drive, but lots of 3, 4, 5 yards here, 3, 4, 5 yards there. They forced Kansas City to dink and dunk. They played a whole lot of quarters and a lot of cover 2, and just forced Kansas City to put it all underneath. And that paid dividends, and the Bills might be paving the way forward. Other teams have done it as well, but now we might truly be seeing the game plan for how you slow down Patrick Mahomes. And then it helps Josh Allen put out an MVP caliber performance. I said in the past power rankings, I've been waiting for him to get back to MVP form. He's gotten better week by week, But then this was finally one of those games where it's like, there he is. That's the Josh Allen of last year. And, obviously you see the hurdle on the screen. He can do that with his legs. I mean, it was an awesome win for Buffalo. And because of that, the Cardinals and the Buccaneers slide down. You can make an argument that the Bills stay at 3 and the Cardinals are still at 1. The Bucs stay at 2. Wouldn't argue with it. This top 3 is all really, really good. And, hey, if you told me there was a matchup this week between the Bills and the Bucs, I'd be watching. If you told me the Bills were playing the Cardinals, I'd be watching. Cardinals, Bucs, I'd be checking it out, right? So it's really close. But coming out of this week with a huge road win on Sunday Night Football, I just feel the Bills are a slightly better football team. Plus, the Cardinals had to struggle to get their win, but as a division opponent, things get interesting. And then the Bucs beat on Miami, so there's not a whole lot to take away there, despite making that secondary look really bad, which is interesting in itself. But that's going to do it for my Week 6 NFL Power Rankings. Hopefully you all enjoyed. If you did, please hit that like button. It'll help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, want more sports content like this, hit that big red subscribe button. And tell me what you think down in the comment section. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Again, this is not about head-to-head, and I have no bias to any sorts of teams. So keep that in mind before you start yelling at me for who I have too high and who I have too low. I do want to hear your thoughts, but just wanted to get that out before you start screaming at me in the comment section. But that's going to do it for today's video. Hopefully you all enjoyed. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.